So welcome back to day 2 of the pre-college programs. You get to stick with us for a couple of hours. We're gonna vibe out again and have a good time. For today, we're gonna start kicking off some of our guest speakers joining in. So even though we are on Zoom webinar, they can't hear you or see you. We do want to make sure you be respectful and of course of all else be engaging and continue showing our community aspect, how we're kind of talking to each other now in the chat box and all of that. Now, I will say when it comes to the chat box, yesterday we low-key froze Zoom, almost broke it. It kicked Jocelyn out a couple times. So I'm going to ask during our presentations and during our speakers, please, if you use the chat box, use it for information and things regarding to the session itself. The side talks, anything like music, tacos right now, I went on an anime, all the other stuff I did yesterday. Say that to during the break time. Use the chat box for the session and things that pertains to it. My speaker today is going to has a lot of engagement within the chat box. So we're going to have to use that to kind of talk with you all and engage with y'all a little bit. So just please, any little thing, any small talk, let's hold it off to our break time and we'll let y'all interact, have a good time. And we have plenty of time to still vibe out. At this point though, I'm going to go ahead and get quiet really quickly. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Thomas Witherspoon. You could see in that website a little bit more of his bio, and I'm sure he'll do an introduction about his stuff as well. So Thomas, whenever you're ready, thank you again for talking to our students today. You can see we have about 100 and almost 40 students on the callers right now that continue joining in. But whenever you're ready, feel free to get started.
Perfect. Thank you all for this invitation, and I'm really excited to be here with the community. I'm going to just start with sharing my screen. I'm going to have a bit of a presentation, and as Justin mentioned, definitely want this to be as interactive and engaging as possible. I think it's important that you all know how excited I am to spend this time with you today. I think it is also important to elevate, like we know who's in the room, we know the quality of individuals in the room, and we know we have people who are the experts of their experience and they have their own kind of voice and knowledge to bring to every single conversation. So the conversation we're going to focus on today is kind of knowing your worth and grow your value. And so know and grow are the two foundational words that we're going to kind of dig into over the course of today. And I do like to kind of set the conversation with a little bit of ground rules and thinking, actually, I'm going to stop sharing one time because I think I forgot something that is extremely important. I'm going to share again and make sure my sound is shared because we have a little video that will be a part of the presentation as well. So I'm going to reshare. But I want to make sure that we kind of get some very clear kind of ground rules. Like you all are all experts of your experience. And so I'm hoping that you all lean into kind of what you bring, the experiences that you have and your own personal backgrounds and experiences. So adding those to the chat box is going to be extremely important. I also like to start my sessions with laying out the fact that there are no right or wrong answers in what we're doing today. And so your experience is what's right for you at this time. And knowing that your experiences might change over time and being open to that is extremely important. And then we all bring value to the conversation. And so knowing who you are is value, and growing from that place continues to add to your value. And so we'll dig into that. But as we kind of go into it, I want to make sure that you understand kind of who I am and how I'm coming to this conversation. So the art here kind of represents a little bit of who I am. So I say I'm grown, but I'm grown-ish. I'm still growing. I continue to grow every single day. It's a part of how I move, how I navigate in spaces. I am a rap and hip hop head. And so you'll see that like I go as far back as like Talib Kweli, and then like I love the baby, Lil Baby, City Girls, all of it. I'm here for it. But family is a cornerstone of who I am. I'm from the city of Chicago, and education is what I do. I'm a researcher, I'm a practitioner, and I love learning. But a part of this kind of development for me happened through my time in college. And so I learned more what it meant for me to be a Black man in an academic setting and in this type of space was extremely important. I understood for the first time in college what it meant to be a first generation college graduate. And so being the first and only person in my family at that time to actually achieve a college degree. And that's a very important identity that I carry with me. Being a Chicago native and not just being from the city, but also being raised in the inner city, it's a little bit different. And so understanding kind of what that means for me growing up on the south side of Chicago is extremely important. And then I grew up in a lower socioeconomic class, like understanding that like we didn't have everything, but we made do with what we had. And we made sure that people didn't go without. And that's why family is so important to me. And then the last thing I would like to point out is that My K through 12, I went to public schools on the south side of Chicago. And I think it did a really great job of preparing me for college. Did it give me all the tools? Probably not. But it definitely kind of ensured that I had a really strong foundation to understand kind of what I needed to know in order to step into college. Now, these are the identities that shape me, and I always like to lay the foundation so that you can understand kind of how I'm coming to the conversation. But going forward, most of everything we talk about is going to be about you, your learning, and your development. But I just wanted to be open with who I am. So now there's a lot of information around and out about the Generation Z. They've named you everything from Gen Z to the iGen to all of these other names that kind of create an understanding of who you are and how you're seen in the world. So as we go into this conversation, thinking about knowing and growing, I think it's important that we kind of start with your own perspective. So I'm going to ask you all to type in the chat box. When you think about your generation, when you think about your generation as a whole, who are you? So let's get some responses in the chat. I know Jacqueline's going to help us kind of read what's coming in for us. So who are you as a generation?
All right. I see bold. We have some students saying they are tech savvy. Generation Z is inclusive and progressive and strong. They are kind. They're open-minded and they are optimistic. I like these terms. All right, y'all, keep them coming. Progressive. They are fighters. They are powerful. I am so, oh my gosh.
I love this energy. Let's go.
Yes, y'all are making my heart soar. They are problem solvers. They are accepting. They are determined. They are, I see a lot of students saying they're progressive, they're open-minded, they're involved, they're breaking barriers.
Yes. Now let's continue and kind of add to this question. So now let's shift it a little bit. Who do people say your generation is? So from your vantage point, how are they naming you? How are they categorizing you all as a generation?
All right, so people say that Gen Z is too soft. They are unmotivated. They are immature. They're sensitive. That's a big word that I see coming in, sensitive. They're the TikTok generation. They are self-centered. They're young. They're problematic. They're phone-driven, but also me too. Yeah, sensitive is a big word that I see coming in. Ignorant, addicted to technology, problematic.
So now I want to make sure that we pay really close attention to how you see yourself and how other people have kind of depicted you all as a generation, because that plays into kind of how we see ourselves overall. Now, the last thing I want to ask you all to kind of switch that note a little bit. Talk to me a little bit about what mark you want to leave on the world as a generation. Think about, as a generation, what mark do you want to leave on the world? Let's switch the energy real quick.
Be more kind to others. Students want to be more accepting. They want to make a difference. They want to accept people. I've seen that come in a few times. They want to be accepting of people and they want to make a difference in the world. They want to know that they changed the world, that they're leaving it a better place than what they see now, to be the change, to have less hate in this world, improving the quality of life for everyone, making it a better place, new ideas, new positivity. Oh, y'all keep these answers coming.
This is it. This is what's important. I think this is what the future of this world is. And that's why it's important that we spend this time with you all as this next generation. Now, so I want to talk to you all a little bit, because you see the perception that you have, and you know what you want to do and the mark that you want to leave, but you also see how other people see you all. Now, we have some one-offs, and some of those things were kind of leaning more towards the negative. Now, there's an institute called the Pew Institute who do research like this on generations and kind of talk very specifically about like how they are seen. And this is typically an intergenerational conversation. So it takes people within the generation, it takes your parents, and it also will take people who have an invested interest in kind of who you are as a generation, and they'll do surveys. And so they've been researching you all, if you know it or not. And so they've come up with some factors that they believe are like true to who you are. So I'm going to kind of walk through them, and then we'll kind of open it up to see, like, do you all agree with this or not? Or if we need to kind of have another conversation around it. So it says like that you all are competitive. You kind of keep the score. You're watching very closely, kind of tracking the numbers, making sure that you are top of the top, best of the best, doing your very best. They say that you all kind of are very skeptical. You are slow to trust, and you want to allow people to kind of show up how they want and be individuals. And that's extremely important. They're also saying that you are the most entrepreneurial generation. So that's a lot of innovation. They're putting a lot of weight on you all to create what the future will be and to create change in this world. And I heard that from your suggestions. I'm really excited to hear kind of that alignment. They say you all are financially focused. So you're not looking at going to kind of blow the bag for no reason. You all are paying attention to how you're saving your money, how you're spending your money, where you are when you're thinking about college and all of those. You're really trying to make the best decisions and get the best bang for your buck. So that's really exciting to hear. They say you all are connected. And some of that typically is through this iPhone generation idea. So thinking about how you're using technology, how you're using the internet in order to build relationships different than most other generations. They're also saying in that, even though you're online, y'all need to be with people. Y'all need community, y'all need to stay connected. And it's important to your overall happiness to be connected to other humans. The other thing is that they say that, you know, that you're so diverse that sometimes you miss the diversity and the nuance that comes in that. And so you all are the generation that normalized being different, being diverse, because people are able to be authentically who they are and genuinely who they are extremely early. They say that you all don't back down from a challenge. You will fight the fight, you all will protest, you all will step in, you all will lean in ways that forces people to pay attention. And this goes to the very last piece, which is y'all want a voice, y'all want a seat at the table, and y'all want to be heard. And that is extremely important. So now I'm going to pause and kind of ask you all, like, are these things that have been researched by your peers and by your parents and by other people who are invested in your future? Do these things speak to you? And if not, what are the things that you're a little bit like, I don't necessarily agree with that? Believe me, in this space, it's okay to disagree.
I mean, Dr. Witherspoon, as you were talking, there's over 100 different chats that were saying yes, and these are nothing but facts, amens, everything. There's about a 99% agree rate.
Okay.
This chat right here.
That's good. Well, you know, again, like I said, as we move through this session, I'm okay with disagreement because I think it only makes us stronger and it keeps pushing us. Now, like, are there any things that you think should be on this list that we missed? Did we miss anything with this list from your perspective? All right, anything? I'm going to take that as they got it right. So I guess the next thing that I want to ask you all is, from your perspective, why do you think it's important for your generation or for generations to be defined? Why do people actually take time to define generations like this? Any thoughts? And remember, there's no wrong answers here. We're just unpacking and exploring together. Why do people define you?
I see some students in the chat saying that usually just patterns are something that people tend to follow, and putting people in category just tends to be a pattern.
Yeah, we definitely, as a nation, have a pattern of creating these categories, and it's connected to what we call social identity theory, and that's extremely important. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but oftentimes, institutes like the Pew Institute and other organizations, they actually do it because it creates a way that they can market to you. They can then take that data and sell it to companies and organizations, so they'll know how to get to you. They use that so they can strategize on how to recruit you to come do what they want you to do. And so it is important that they get to know you so that they can then speak to you in ways that is extremely important to you. It's also used in some really positive ways. And so thinking from an education perspective, people utilize this type of data so they'll know how to teach to you and ensure that you kind of get the messages that you need to get as you're going through your learning journey and experience. So if you think about like how curriculum changes or how people teach different ways to different groups, or they teach math different than they teach science or reading and writing, is to ensure that you're able to get the knowledge. And so social identity theory and social categorization is not all bad, but please know that if you allow people to define you, they will. And so you have to take back ownership in a lot of that, and that's extremely important. Now, we kind of talked about the why. Let me move us forward. We kind of talked about why people are doing it. What is going on? All right, we talked about the why. I now want to get a little bit into kind of the process of socialization, right? And so we talked about why people have to categorize. And those categories then kind of turn into like how we see ourselves. And so, for example, if we're to, let's throw in politics. So if you're a Democrat and you typically vote Democrat, there is an identity associated with being a Democrat. And so people are expecting you to navigate in a very specific way. In the same way that if you are, let's say, I mentioned, like, I'm a hip hop head. So if I'm walking around talking about, I'm a hip hop head and I love music, yeah, I can't talk about like let's say if I can't talk about one of the historic performances, let's say Method Man and Mary J. Blige, You're All That I Need from 1997. How do I really fall into that space if I can't talk about what's connected to that culture? And so there's certain things that people expect from you when you actually identify and fall into specific social categorization. Now, in that, it forces us, as we think about who we are and what we value, it forces us to actually look at other people. And in looking at other people, we kind of compare. Sometimes we're comparing people who are the same as us. So for example, as Justin is sitting here and I'm talking about Method Man and Mary, he's like, yeah, that's nothing. But if we don't have Talib Kweli in the conversation, then we're really not having a conversation about hip hop. And so he's judging me based on his idea of what it means to be a hip hop head. And all of those things are extremely important because we're all coming to these conversations with our own identities in mind. But where it kind of goes wrong is like when we think about this in-group, out-group, and it forces us to actually focus on the differences that we have and not to focus on where we are aligned. And so it is important that as we think about these programs that you're in now, you all are bright, talented individuals who have come to this program for whatever reasons you have, but hopefully the ultimate goal is so that you can have insight into kind of how college can be beneficial for you in the long run. So with that in mind, we want to focus on the connectivity. And so even though you all come from different backgrounds and experiences and different families, it is important that we focus on our points of connection and not our points of difference. Now, I'm going to turn it back over to you all, and I want to ask you this question. So in the chat box, talk to us a little bit about why you've decided to actually come to this summer program. Talk to us a little bit about why you've decided to come.
All right, so what our students are saying so far: to learn more about NC State, to meet new people. Students want to get motivated to move forward in these next steps that they have. They want to feel more prepared. They want to connect with students who share their same backgrounds or similar backgrounds. To learn more about college in general and how to apply.
So, what you were saying?
Oh, sorry. I see a very large amount of comments just saying that students want to learn more about NC State and just being more confident about the college application process so that they can feel prepared for when it comes time for them to submit their applications, and also the college experience in general.
Well, thank you all for that. I think like what I heard was, so one, learn about college, learn about the process, learn about NC State. Also I heard meeting new people, build community, and all of those things are extremely important. And what we know is that because you all are here and you all were accepted into this program, you all are bright individuals who will have choices when it comes to college. And so we're going to get to some of the resources specifically at NC State, especially around identity and development specifically. But I'm going to ask you all right now to kind of participate in this poll. Jacqueline, can you share the poll with the group? And then we'll move into our next piece.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. So you're going to see this poll pop up right in front of you. So the question is, how important is a college degree in your ability to be successful? So you'll see 3 options in front of you. Go ahead and choose whatever your heart is telling you, whatever your gut is telling you, and then we'll go ahead and discuss those results once y'all are finished voting.
And remember, there's no right or wrong answers. The one thing that we want to do is make sure that people stay open. That's the most important. All right, I see the numbers slowing down. So we got, oh, okay. And so I think that about 12% say, you know what I'm saying, 30%. And then 30 to 60% is connected to success. And then about 55% of the group, so more than half of the group, believe that like a college degree is really important to your ability to be successful. So these numbers here are important for us to kind of pay attention to as we go into this next slide, because, you know, I like to talk to people about this idea of being a lifelong learner. And so we're going to dig into that a little bit, but we know that making the college decision is not easy. And we also know that staying in college is not an easy task. So I'm gonna, if we could close down the poll now, and then I'm gonna take us into our next slide. And I'm just gonna ask you all to pay attention and kind of listen to the conversation that's being had in this next video clip that we're gonna play.
So wait, when you fell, did you hit your head? Are you concussed?
No, I just feel like right now I may have outgrown Calio.
Hold up, Zoe. I never, ever said drop out of college.
Sure, you didn't, but you pointed to all the reasons why I should. And the most natural thing to eliminate feels like college.
Really? That feels more natural than quitting a job as a stylist for a rapper that spells his name with $2 signs.
Think about it. I have my dream job right now. What's another year at CalU really gonna get me except wasting more of my parents' money and losing momentum on a career I've already started?
I just think you're setting yourself up for failure.
But why? Plenty of creative people can be successful without degrees.
Big facts. Mark Zuckerberg, Diddy, Kanye.
Dude, stop. Those are all outliers, okay? I don't know anybody personally without a degree who's balling on that level. Unless we're talking about drug dealers, then I know like 3. Slippery Jeff, Fat Hakeem, and Dave. You know Dave?
I love Dave.
Okay, come on, Jillian, back me up. Remember when I missed my cover shoot and you said that you would drop out of school in a heartbeat if that meant that you could direct a film?
Nah, see, I actually said that I would miss the final, not drop out of college altogether. I'm sorry, there's just no way I wouldn't get my degree. But that's just me, though, you know? I don't know what it's like to be a Black woman in styling. I just know how hard it is in my industry, and I don't want to give people any reason to keep me out.
Bigger facts, okay? Aside from education, college is about proving to ourselves that we can see something through, you know?
Zoe has seen something through, though. I mean, she got a magazine cover in 6 months. Imagine what she could pull off if she wasn't here.
Yeah.
Yes, but also think about how disappointed her parents will be to have 2 college dropouts in the family.
That's the beauty of being 21. For once in my life, I don't have to answer to anyone except myself. So, how about we go enjoy the final hours of my 21st birthday party? Yeah?
Yay.
Come on.
Yeah, come on.
Woo!
All right, so I want to ask you all to kind of, in the chat box, type in what were some of the arguments noted for Zoe kind of staying at CalU, and then what were some of the arguments noted for Zoe leaving CalU? Kind of add the, if it's for or against. And then what do you think she should have done?
All right, so what our students are saying is that a big argument against dropping out is that they would disappoint their parents and their families.
So family pressure, definitely.
Family pressure. Money, wasting money would be a big factor as well that our students are saying. Cultural pressure.
Cultural pressure, wasting money, yes.
Yes.
Other things that you heard.
Yeah. You've worked so hard this far. Why give up?
Yeah. Worked so hard. So she's in her junior year at this point, and you're gonna give up? Yeah, so that pressure.
Yeah. It could be a disadvantage for jobs if he drops out.
Disadvantage, yeah. And I think there was a conversation there around different types of industries. And so knowing what you're interested in and then knowing what it requires to be successful in that industry definitely came up. Thank you for whoever added that in.
All right.
All right. Any final?
Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with family. Her brother dropped out too. So it would be a lot if she did too. What if her job doesn't work out?
What if the job doesn't work out? Yeah, all these questions that we kind of have to navigate as we're making the decision to go to college or not. And I don't want to paint the picture that I believe that college is the answer to all. I think college can be a solution if you navigate it and use it in a way that is important to you. For me, it was transformative, and I'll talk a little bit about that personally, but I also think you have to think about your own personal situation. You also want to think about like how and where you choose to go and how you'll be supported in those spaces. But just like we talked about the social identity theory and how people are categorized, there are categories and there are expectations that people believe you carry once you actually have a degree. Now, so I want to highlight a few of those and kind of talk through them. So the first thing, there is this notion that like, because you've completed a degree, that you have increased access to job opportunities. Now, if you can kind of put yourself in the mindset of like, think about when you've tried to apply for a job and they say high school diploma required, college degree required. So there are some instances where you have access to more jobs because you've completed a degree. The other thing is like, there's this idea that because you've completed a degree and you have a major, that you have some type of specialization in an area. Now, we know that for some specific fields, so engineering, medicine, law, there's social work, there's some additional education that is required, but you all get to focus on a specific major and get to go deep in something. So there's an understanding that you have a depth of knowledge in a specific area when you leave. I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but I was an English major and I love to write. And so that was extremely important for me. And it's a large part of my identity as well. So they say that you have increased marketability. So because college puts you in an environment where you're engaging with people from all backgrounds and experiences, that you're navigating concerns, you're processing through situations, that you can actually show up differently in spaces because you've had more exposure to difference, and you can be different in spaces. So it makes you more marketable. There's also the idea that you have earning potential. And so we know that that Forbes regularly will redo the numbers, but on average, a person with a bachelor's degree will earn about $1 million more over the lifetime than someone with just a high school diploma. That has been reiterated over and over again. So the earning potential is there, and the numbers and the tax dollars actually speak to that. So that's important for us to keep in mind. They say that you have economic stability. And now we know that we've all navigated very turbulent times over these past few years, and then with the pandemic and everything. So we've all seen kind of the economy kind of go up and down. But what we've also seen is that the unemployment rate for people with college degrees are half of that of people without college degrees. And so you can go fact check all of this. It's very public out information. The other thing is like, you have more networking opportunities. And this is because you've developed a community in college that will oftentimes go off across the globe and do wonderful things. And then those people become a part of your network, and then you're able to utilize their networks in order to continue to grow as a person and develop personally. The next thing, personal growth. People say that in college, those are the 4 to 6 years where you get to actually focus on you. Classes are going to center identity. They're going to center things that are important to you. You're going to be able to drill down on a passion area when it comes to your major. And so those times is probably the only time in which you get to just stop and focus on you and be selfish around kind of how you learn and grow. And so they believe that people leave college having a different understanding of who they are, and they can actually talk about who they are differently than people who don't. And then it's a pathway to advancement. And so when we think about this pathway to advancement, it is because you are an alum of an institution, and that alum has hundreds of thousands, that institutions have hundreds and thousands of alums that you now have access to. You're now a part of a deeper network that you should be able to use to navigate and build your own personal journey to whatever life is for you. Now, I want to point out all these things are extremely important, but also you can get access to all of these things without a degree. So I'm not trying to paint the picture that a college degree is the only way to go, but I am telling you, once you walk out of college, there's some expectations that are laid upon you by how we've socialized and categorized people with degrees. Now, as we know, this has changed over time. Historically, colleges were founded to grow and develop priests and to keep religion solid, and then over time it's developed. And so we didn't see until the early 20th century this true deep investment in the higher ed system as we know it today. So it's important to also know like things change over time, and that's also something that has happened. Now, what do you all think about this list of the benefits of a degree? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree? This is, again, another Pew study. Like, do you agree with it? Do you disagree? Are there things that they miss that you think we should highlight in this space?
All right, I'm seeing a lot of comments in the chat saying that students agree with what is being said. Is there anything that y'all feel like should be added or something that y'all may not agree with? What's y'all's thought process?
It's totally okay to disagree, because I agree with most of this, but I do think that I've learned so much from people who've never stepped foot on a college campus. And coming from a family where I'm the first generation in my family to go to college, and my people have been able to sustain themselves and build community and do great things without a degree. Now, I'm grateful that I've been able to have a degree, but.
Yeah, we actually have a comment saying that college doesn't promise or doesn't 100% promise economic stability.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Because as we were talking about the unemployment rate, the unemployment rate is about half as we've kind of navigated this pandemic, but that still means that there's a population of people with degrees who weren't able to find jobs. So that's a spot on comment.
Mm-hmm. Says that the list is kind of missing how more people are self-educating.
Yes, and that's exactly important. And this is a monolithic way of looking at education. Like, you have to go sit in a structure for a certain amount of time, but people are credentialing now, people are doing trades. I went to a career academy, and when I graduated from high school, I actually had a sanitation license, and I was certified to run a hotel because I had to have a job while in high school as a part of this work program. So yeah, that's right.
I have a student who is saying that one thing that could be added is that there's a sense of like societal respect when it comes to having a college degree, because some people are more respective with more education in many cases.
Yeah, and it definitely, all of these things kind of play into what we call respectability politics here. And so it's like, so because there's this expectation and people are given a little bit more respect if you say like, oh, people sit up straight. It's like, oh, I graduated from NC State, or oh, I went to this institution, or when I introduce myself as Thomas versus when I introduce myself as Dr. Witherspoon, people sit up and look different. So it comes with some respect. Now, Personally, I don't necessarily believe that it is warranted or needed, because I think we should respect all people as humans. Yeah.
A big one that's coming up is like, yes, maybe economic stability. However, college degrees come with a lot of debt a lot of times.
Listen, as a person here sitting paying off this debt day in and day out, you are spot on. And I think it's important as you're making that decision, as we go back to your who you are as a generation, y'all are financially focused. And so that's extremely important, that you all are paying attention to the real price tag of college. Yeah, definitely. All right, so I'm gonna, do you have something else you want to throw in?
I think that covers a lot of it.
Perfect. All right, so these next few slides I'm gonna go through relatively quick because I want to make sure we leave time for any questions that you all might have for me. But we already went there. So I do believe that higher education for me was transformative, and I do believe that there's a transformative power in higher education. And so for me, the three major things that I believe I gained from my higher ed experience was identity development. So understanding who I am, and kind of how I navigate, thinking about this idea of growth mindset, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about that. And then the culture and community that I'm able to carry with me day in and day out. So with that, identity development, and I'm not going to read definitions to you all, they're there, but like when we think about this idea of identity development, it creates a space for you to kind of explore, grow, and challenge. And that's what we do in those times where we're in our dorm room talking to our friends about what we just saw in the news, or as we're protesting things that are injustices that we don't agree with or believe in. So like identity development kind of plays into all of that. Now, what I want to ask you all is like, what identities are you all bringing to this space today? Just kind of throw them into the chat. We'll read them and then we'll kind of keep it going. But what identities are you coming into this space with?
All right, y'all, make sure to use that chat. We have some students that are saying they are African American or Black female, Black woman, Black male, Native American female, Mexican male, immigrant, Latino male, daughter of immigrants.
And I think that the reason why I want to make sure that we are creating a space for those identities to be elevated, because there's power in their strengths and identities that we bring. And we must know that because we bring different identities, we show up in space with knowledge and experience that should be valued and should be elevated. Now, with identity development and these identities that you're bringing, it is also important to understand that you all grow over time. So now I want to ask you all quickly to, if you could, just kind of answer this question for me. So think about where you were when you started ninth grade, and then think about like who you are today. What's changed the most about you over time? So thinking about ninth grade, starting ninth grade to now, what's changed the most?
We have a lot of students that say that their mindset has changed, their mentality, their work ethic. Students feel more mature.
Yeah.
Mindset's coming in a lot.
Yeah. And I think that's important to highlight. That's going to continue to change. And it's important that we pay attention to the change. Now, think about that and think about you're in a space where you're solely focusing on you and you're living, where you're studying, where you're reading, where you're being active on campus. That growth is going to happen exponentially. And that's what a college campus community and an environment creates for you. So we're gonna, the next one was, so growth mindset. And again, I'm not gonna read definitions to you all, but I do have a question for you all, because growth mindset creates this space for you to kind of set an intention, work hard towards it, and achieve the goal. And so when you think about like, what's something that you've set your mind to, and that you've been able to accomplish to date, despite the odds? For me, it was college graduation. 11% of my high school actually went to college. So 11 out of 100% actually went to college. And I was one of 6 people that went to college that actually graduated in 4 years. And so it was a big deal. And it was outside of the odds because I went to a place that I was supposed to go to work after high school. I wasn't supposed to go to college. So What about you all? What have you overcome? What have you achieved?
We've had some students saying that they've achieved being happy, which love that. Getting into early college, making the varsity football team as a freshman, improving mental health. Students are achieving high GPAs. All right, I see y'all. Students have completed half their high school careers over Zoom, and that is something that they have achieved.
That's an accomplishment.
Yes, very much. Shout out. Completing school with decent grades despite COVID, despite virtual learning, getting an A in math, even though they're bad at math. All right.
That was the story of my college experience. Well, so I like to make sure that we point out, like, we use these words like growth mindset and these other things that kind of lean into what it means to kind of persist and struggle and work, but also achieve. And you all have been doing this forever. You all have been defying the odds. Like the fact that you're here right now after 18 months of COVID and Zoom, you all are defying odds. So we're really excited that you're here. And that's what college creates, this growth mindset, because people are looking to push and challenge and grow and want you to think outside the box, but they also want you to be successful. To know that you can walk into a space, you can struggle, but nobody's gonna question or judge whether you belong or not, because you do belong, and it's important for you to struggle as a part of this process. Now, the last one that I'm gonna talk about with it was culture and community. And again, definitions are what they are, and I'm not going to kind of beat you all up with definitions, so you can kind of skim those. But so what cultures and communities do you currently belong to? We want to, again, continue to elevate the cultures and communities that you all belong to.
All right, y'all, feel free to use that chat, but we have students coming in with saying that they belong to the Black community, the Latino, Latinx, Hispanic community, the Native community, the Asian community, the LGBTQ plus community, the Christian community. All right, y'all, the Pacific Islander community.
Yes,
the
yes.
Immigrant community, the Indian American community, Black Girl Magic, period. Okay, yes.
Yes. Well, and I really appreciate you all kind of calling into the conversation, the identities, the communities, and the cultures that you carry with you, because that's extremely important. And it is also important that you know, over your college career, the identities that you come in with will expand and grow and shift. And so we use this term called like our most salient identities, and they come up and navigate and move differently depending on where you are in life. So for example, for me, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. The population is about 97% African-American in the area where I grew up. And so being a Black man was not something we talked about. But then when I went to a predominantly white institution where Black men only made up 3% of the population, my identity as a Black man became extremely important to me. And I needed to unpack that and understand what that meant in this space. And the same came with being a first gen, because in my community, we didn't talk about that much. But as I stepped on the campus and people who had parents and grandparents and great-grandparents who had attended the college and looked like they had the keys to success, and I was trying to navigate it, those were important. So it's important that you think about the community and culture that you develop over time, and you also keep holding true to the identities that are important to you. Now, we hope you are thinking about college, which from your responses earlier, we know that you are. We hope you are considering NC State. As you are thinking about the places where you will go, it is important that you focus on institutions that have resources to support you. And so a few things that are extremely important to highlight about NC State, right? Our Office of Multicultural Student Affairs is the place where we do a lot of identity development, we do a lot of training, we do a lot of support. We also do a lot of cultural heritage months, specifically for students and for staff. And we create communities for people to come together, ask questions, and kind of push the boundaries. So that's extremely important. So that's the Office of Multicultural Student Affairs. We also have our African American Cultural Center, which is a space that kind of centers the diaspora, but is open to the entire community. So anyone who's looking to connect to cultural competencies and kind of push and learn and grow are welcome in this space, but we do it through the lens of the African American culture. The next place that I want to elevate is our Glbt Center. And so we use this space as a place to kind of learn, grow, and educate, but it's also a space for exploration. It's also a space for allyship. We want people to be able to come and be authentically who they are and be supported. And that is extremely important. So that's one of the highlights of our Glbt Center. And the last center that I want to highlight is our Women's Center. And the Women's Center, even though it's named the Women's Center, it's an extremely diverse space. And it focuses on social justice. It focuses on leadership. It focuses on trauma-informed care. It focuses specifically on how we work, connect, and take care of each other. And how do we take that skill and move it into kind of who we are in the next phase of our life. And so a lot of the leadership development happens through there, and everyone is welcome in that space. Now, so if you are looking at colleges, if you're thinking about communities that will serve you, you want to make sure that these places have nuanced resources that focus on your identity and that help you to be successful and does not force you to fit into some small box that may not actually fit the beautiful identities that you're already coming to that campus with. So I hope you all will take a serious look at us. Really excited to be here with you today. And I think we have a little bit of time for question and answer.
Yes, that was awesome. I just want to start out with saying, Dr. Witherspoon, thank you so much for your presentations. I was seeing a couple of comments while you were going through the last couple of slides through the chat, just saying how important having these conversations is. And thank you for bringing these topics up and just prompting our students to have these conversations. If you look down at the chat, you can see all the thank yous that are coming in from our students, which yes, thank you. And at this time, y'all, like you have the opportunity to ask Dr. Witherspoon your questions. So feel free, please use the Q&A feature that's located at the bottom of your screen in case you have any questions for Dr. Thomas Witherspoon today, because we do have a couple of minutes before we break out into our break to just answer any questions that y'all may have, and they're starting to come in, so thank you so much. I did see the one that actually came in towards the beginning of the presentation, just saying, my parents graduated college in 2000, and around that time, NC State was known as a school that was not as supportive of its African-American students. Can you speak to what NC State has done to improve upon its support system for minority students outside of the current programs involved?
Yeah. Well, so thank you for that. And I think in the late 90s, early 2000s, there were a lot of institutions that were getting their footing in how to support students from diverse backgrounds. And NC State being one of them, if you look at who we were and who we are now, and think about the resources that's available. And so I would like to note that the Women's Center, the African American Cultural Center, and MSA are all 30 plus years old. And so it's not a new tradition here at NC State to be in support of students from marginalized backgrounds and marginalized identities. So we have been doing that. But what we've done specifically over the past 6 years is actually created the office that I work in. So the Office of Institutional Equity and Diversity. And so we're intentionally looking at the resources and supports that we provide. We're looking at the programming that we provide for students. We're looking at policies and structures and systems that create barriers for students. And we're actively dismantling those systems in order to ensure that you don't have the barriers. Our vice provost is working to ensure that as we're kind of reviewing scholarships, so there's specific scholarships that come out of our space in support of students from marginalized identities. And we review those applications and we award money to ensure that finances is not a barrier for our students. So there's a lot of intentionality and a lot of resources put into ensuring that young people who come here have access to resources and can be successful. The other thing that I'll say, and the last thing, is that we intentionally spend time with students to listen to what is working, what's not working, and what the needs are. And so we've gone through many shifts between the 2000s, I think is what we mentioned, to now. And a lot of the change that we've seen has been because students have been comfortable and confident enough to share with us some of the change that they want to see. and we've done it. And so, for example, like the Women of Color Retreat, that didn't exist 4 years ago, but now we have a standalone Women of Color Retreat where we're going offsite, we're exploring identity, we're thinking about what it means to be a woman of color at a predominantly white institution, and building community and networks. And there's like villages for identities, and there's so many other things that I could talk about that we're doing that's changed in the last 5 years, let alone the last 15 years.
Sorry, I'm still muted. Thank you so much for just addressing that question and providing with all that information. There are a couple more questions in the chat, and one of them just kind of go off of this past question that was asked. One student asked, too many times I see schools not do anything when their POC students feel unsafe. What are some things that NC State does to protect them and other marginalized groups?
Yeah, so I think there's a few ways in which we approach this. So I think some of the internal ways in which we do it is thinking about the policies. And so some of the policy change that I've already kind of outlined is extremely important to that process. The other thing is, like, we have now instituted a very thorough bias incident and response protocol. And so it is a very clear action-oriented, like when something happens, how we inform the community, what type of response we do for the community, and then how we act on behalf of the community. And then how do we continue to inform, train, and grow the community to ensure that these issues don't continue to happen. And so that's our bias response team. Also, under our office, we have a specific arm that is research, training, and evaluation. And so what we're doing now is proactively going out to spaces that may have been deemed as spaces that are not supportive or engaging for people from marginalized identities. And we're doing intentional trainings and around what is bias and how it shows up in spaces. How are we navigating microaggressions in the higher ed space? Why are we not kind of coming together and unified as a community? So there's like training that happens there, but then also it's the programming, it's the education. It's looking at the curriculum across all the areas and thinking about where are we also elevating leaders of color, leaders from marginalized backgrounds and identities, so that when we're looking at the work that we're doing in the classroom, it's not just creating a monolithic experience of who gets to be in the front seat, who gets to be the leader, but really thinking about it. So we're handling that from a curricular, from a policy, and from a response perspective, as well as training.
Thank you so much. One question that we got asked as I navigate the rest of the questions that we have, was that student center named after you?
No, not at all. No, but it was named after Augustus Witherspoon, who was the first tenured African-American professor here and long-standing faculty member for over 30 plus years. And so the Witherspoon Center, where the African-American Culture Center is named after Augustus Witherspoon, and there's no relation that I know of, but I'm gonna figure it out.
Thank you. All right, and this question is geared towards you specifically. So as a Black man, how has being at NC State and working at a PWI or predominantly white institution affected you, or how have you navigated that?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because I intentionally choose to work at predominantly white institutions because I knew what it was like to be in a predominantly white institution and need to see people who actually cared about me, who looked like me, who did work on behalf of me. And those people are still my long-term mentors today. And so I am personally in this space in order to be not only a figure and a face, but to also be a resource and an advocate for students so people can kind of see what is possible through me, and so being available. But in education, it is extremely important that I am clear on who I am as a Black man. I'm clear on the identities that I come to the table with, and that I understand what it means to be in this space as a Black man and the power that being a Black man brings. And I'm very proud of my identity. And so I speak very proudly about my identity all across the campus, because it's important that my culture and my heritage, just as each and every one of your culture and heritage, continues to be elevated. And so for me, it's my passion, it's my life work to be able to be here in support of students, so that hopefully you'll do the same thing in return for some next generation in whatever fields you all decide to go into. So I'm a proud Black man here on this campus, and anyone who knows me knows I talk about it in my background very regularly.
Awesome. I love that. We have time for one more question, and I do see that we have a couple of more in the Q&A that we may not have time to respond to. So y'all hold on to those. We will have more opportunities to discuss more of these questions throughout these next 2 weeks. So please remember them and make sure to ask them at a later time. But this question is interesting. What advice would you give to somebody who about breaking generational norms, or they say curses, about furthering your education, since in a lot of communities it's becoming normalized to just get through high school?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. And I love that question because that was kind of my experience. So in my house, it was like, you get out of high school and then you figure it out. You become a tax-paying citizen and you go be grown somewhere, but get out of my house. Like that was the house I grew up in. And once I actively made the decision that college was going to be my next step, I spoke it into existence. I started to put myself in spaces with people who did attend college. And so I started to go to kind of groups and be around people. And even in my church, I started to talk to the people, the older people who had actually gone to college. And I started to listen to them and kind of explore how they made their choices. And so not necessarily wanting to fight against why people believe like you don't necessarily need to go to college. That's not really what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was figure out like, what was the positive side of that? Why did people actually make the active decision to go to college? And align that up with what I see from my life, align that up with the values that I have, and see how can my life be benefited by participating in the college education process. And so that's what I did. I kind of shifted who I was around. I shifted how I thought about things, and I started to spend time. And then when people, and especially people kind of close to me, saw like, oh, he's serious about this, they slowly got on board, because we never know why people are responding to something the way that they are. It could be that maybe they had aspirations, but they couldn't, or maybe they didn't have the resources, or maybe they don't want to see you hurt and crushed. And they've seen many people go to college and come home. So they could be doing it to try to protect you or cover you. We never know why people are doing the things that they're doing. And so we have to shift and focus on aligning with the things that connect to who we are, and then continue to allow people to join you along the journey. Because the further you get connected to college and you start to go to college, people are going to be proud of you. They're going to be excited about you. And the skepticism that they might have had will diminish. But if you've written them off, they might have something to add to you as you're on that journey. And so you don't want to write them off. You just want to kind of shift and pivot to people who are aligned with where you're going.
Thank you so much for answering those questions and just being here, sharing your knowledge and sharing your wisdom with our students. Just from what I was able to see in the chat, like they enjoyed it a lot, and just all the information that you were able to provide today. So thank you so much for your time, your knowledge, and your words. I'm sure that our students feel very inspired. So y'all, if you can join me in just giving one last thank you to Dr. Witherspoon for sharing his time with us today, I would definitely appreciate it. And at this time, we're actually going to go into our 15-minute break, my friends. This concludes session 1 of day 2, and we will return at 2:15 for our second session of the day, which pertains to how to approach your college essay, which is a big part of your college application. So y'all go get some water, go to the restroom, stretch your legs, or just continue to talk to each other. That is fine at this time. This break is yours, so feel free to use it how you would like. But yeah, we'll be back here in about 14 minutes. And thank you so much, Dr. Witherspoon, again.